Let's wait. We'll just delay it. Debbie, can you make a copy of this? Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to hold off a few minutes. We've got a couple of updates we have to take care of. It's been a tough week. So, just to let you all know before we start tonight's meeting, before we do anything, just to give you an idea, and we're still experiencing a lot of technical difficulties. Since Thursday, we've been without internet access. We have had no power on Friday. And this morning we came in, there was no phones and there was no internet access again. So this agenda is all over the place. We did our very best to get it together tonight. The agenda was printed with a whole bunch of stuff that was not on the agenda that was supposed to be on the agenda. So we're going to be adding that on in special consideration and whatnot. We have a way to figure this out to do this right. Right now, one of the other pieces that was supposed to be on that never made it is being printed as we speak. So just give us 5 minutes and we'll begin shortly. Sit back, listen to the rain, enjoy this moment of silence. So I know I speak for everyone when I say that it's good we're having all this rain. Just trying to break the ice. Okay, at this time, we'd like to call the meeting to order and have you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. If we can have our Deputy Town Clerk give us call to order, give us our roll call.
Councilwoman Albrecht,
Here.
Councilman Mazzella,
Here.
Councilman O'Hanlon,
Here.
Councilman Reifenberg,
Here.
Supervisor Delvecchio,
Here.
Town Attorney Warren Raplansky,
Here.
Town Attorney Emily Svensson. Here. All present.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. We got some moving around here today. So Michael, go ahead, please.
Yes, so I'll first start by making a motion to add resolution number 919 of 2023, labeled Resolution Appointing the Law Firm of McCabe, Coleman, Ventosa, and Patterson as Special Conflict Counsel and authorizing the proper officials to execute an agreement professional services as the next item under items of special consideration.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
And
I'll
then-
second that beforehand, but
There you go.
throw that in somewhere in the minutes.
And
We didn't
then
have a second.
I'll make a motion to allow 16A, B, C, D, E, F, and G onto the agenda, and we'll move them up to follow in order under new business resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I'll make a motion to add the Bodner subdivision discussion item as the first item under old business discussions on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing, 7A. Approval of cable television agreement between Spectrum and Northeast LLC in the town of Pleasant Valley. I am in receipt of the affidavit of posting for the public hearing for a cable television renewal agreement between Spectrum Northeast LLC and the town of Pleasant Valley by the town clerk Mary Beth Muir, dated September 6, 2023, and the affidavit of publication by the Northern Dutchess News dated September 6, 2023. Without any further ado, I believe we open the meeting to the public I make a motion, we move the meeting open to the public for the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Got to press the button.
There we go. Good evening, Chris Hart, Smith Road. Before we get into the public hearing for the franchise renewal, can you guys give us a little bit of background as to where we are, when does it expire, Is there a committee? Have they been negotiating back and forth with the cable company? Has any of that taken place, and can you give us an update as to where we are before I start diving into comments?
Yeah, I mean, the Cablevision contract is almost ancient at this point. We have a representative here from the cable company. Do you remember the date of the original of the existing contract?
It expired in 2014.
2014.
Wait,
So
2014.
you've actually been operating under the 2014 contract. Since then, there's been a change in ownership, I believe, and the cable company's taken over its, charter. And I have been negotiating with the Mr. Carmada from Spectrum, from Charter, with regard to the new Cablevision contract. I also sent a copy of the Cablevision contract to the Public Service Commission. They have a resource there for municipalities where they'll review the contract, and we got some input from them also. But there's no committee that I understand that's ever been established for the town of Pleasant Valley.
Okay, well, then I'm just going to jump right into it. 1.1, you need to define the items included in the gross revenues for franchise fees. And define the items and services not calculated in the franchise fees. Now, are you guys aware that internet connectivity, your cable modems, and your phone service is not part of your franchise fees? You guys aware of that? Yes, no? Maybe. It's okay to say I don't know. Currently, right now, the internet is considered an interstate commerce. The FCC has declared that it's not eligible, but there's case law and challenges to that. You need to put a provision in that franchise agreement that gives you a flow down. Whereas if it becomes able to be added to the franchise agreement, you want to be able to grab that during the duration of the contract, not when it expires. 1.1, I hope you guys are writing this down. The distance should increase from 150 to 350, to 300 feet based upon the need to address the rural parts of town currently unserved. What happens is after you go to 150 feet, the cable's got to be upgraded. So the cable company's a little smart here and saying, hey, 200 feet, take it to 300. 6.1, that applies to the same comment above. Oh, excuse me, no, wait. The length of the contract, I think they're asking for 10 years. It should be 5. You say, why 5? This is a technology that's on its way out. Everybody's cutting the cable. Everybody's going to broadband. Everybody's going to services that you guys aren't going to get revenue on your franchise fees. This year alone, can you explain how much you've collected in franchise fees? John, you're introducing the budget tonight. Do you remember off the top of your head what we've got? No? Yes, maybe?
300,000-400,000 somewhere.
In franchise fees that we've received to date?
I don't know the
Oh,
exact
okay.
date when it comes to per year, what it was last year.
Okay, well, last year you guys had budgeted, I think, $160,000 in franchise fees. I don't know what you've collected this year, but I guarantee you it's probably nowhere near that amount. You really start to need to look at this a little bit closer. So that based on that, start with 5 years, based on today's changing technologies. Now, the thing that comes into play is currently in this town, there's areas that are underserved and have been neglected for years. I did the original, one of the original cable franchise agreements back with TCI. And our goal back then was to have every single house, every single road wired for cable TV. And we took the approach, if there's electric, there should be cable TV. I don't care if you're servicing the cows. Guess what? The farmer who owns that property, when he goes to subdivide and sell, if there's cable service available there, it increases the value of his property. Do we have a map of the areas that are currently serviced in town by the cable company? We should have a map that shows every road that has cable TV service as well as every road and area that doesn't have it. If we don't have that, there's no way you guys can begin to negotiate how many houses per mile. 20 houses per mile, you can't negotiate if you don't know what you're looking at. And there's a lot of rural areas, I think Rusky Lane up in that area, that don't have cable TV. You need to take the approach, every single road gets cable TV 100%. End of story. There's federal grants, there's grants from New York State to provide rural cable financing to these companies that extend the broadband out to these rural areas. You need to hold tight on that and dig your heels in. Agreed upon target date for 100% service should be put out there, whether it's 18 months, 2 years, or whatever. And you can entice the cable company by saying, look, if you guys give us the 100%, we'll expand and extend the franchise agreement from 5 years to 7 years. What are they going to tell you? No? I mean, negotiate. But then on the other hand, you know, put a fine in there. If you don't get to that target date, then guess what? You got to pay the town some type of a fine, whether it be matching the franchise fees for the last 6 months or for every 6 months that they missed the target. The Public Service Commission is going to tell you you can't ask for these things, so don't be afraid. Any future regulatory pricing currently in place right now, because you guys can't control the pricing, and there's talk about it being regulated by either the FCC or the state, needs to happen in a flow-down clause. You need to put that into the franchise agreement immediately, that if it takes place, you don't have to wait till the end. Service to municipal buildings. I see that you had the firehouses, you had the state police barracks. What you excluded here is the town hall, the historical building, the mill site, all the elementary schools, Traver, West, Netherwood, and the library. You know, if you have to come back and say, well, we don't want it, doesn't matter, it's in the contract, you get it for free if you want it, you get that TV. At one point, we used to have a TV in here for the seniors. You know, I don't know where it is or where it went to, but you know, that was out there. The other item that they have in there that they've quite, I shouldn't say sneakily, but what they've put this in there is the audit-based payment formula. So they're telling you that cost-based payment formulas for auditing can't happen. Now, do you guys know what that is? That is, a company comes in and they agree to do an audit on a cable company, and they'll split the profits for whoever they find, that it doesn't cost you anything. Now, whether or not that's still taking place, or whether it's legal, I'm not too sure, but if they're putting into the contract that they don't want it, guess what? It must be legal, and that's something you really need to use as a negotiating chip for getting the TV service expanded throughout the town. You guys should also look to waive any recoverable PEG costs via franchise fees allowable under the PSC and FCC regulations. And what that is, if they put in the public service channel or whatever, they can bill back some of the costs through franchise fees. You got to see if you can get them to waive that. You should also address the services provided beyond cable television. In the future, you're going to have public Wi-Fi. They already have some of these places up throughout the town. Although it's not regulated by your franchise agreement right now, currently, potentially it will be. And this is the stuff you got to go back and negotiate. To be quite honest, you know what? You guys aren't anywhere near ready to adopt this particular franchise agreement that they've given you. You're dealing with a company whose stock trades at about $455 a share. So understand who your opponent is. Their shares in stock are worth more than Google. They're worth more than IBM. They're a very smart and profitable and strong company. Know who you're dealing with. Those are my suggestions. For what it's worth, I hope you can implement some of them and dig your heels in and negotiate for the town. This needs to be a negotiation, not a ratification. So that means, you know what? Negotiate. And if we've been out since 2014, and if it takes another year or two, then by all means dig in and get what we need. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question? What is your experience with cable contracts?
I used to sit on the town board.
Okay.
I negotiated probably one of the second or third contracts with, at the time, TCI. We expanded cable TV by probably over 40 to 50 miles within the town, where we worked closely with Central Hudson, with pole licensing fees, TCI. You know, you want to find the history of it, you know what, I'll tell you, go to the library, pull out the Valley Voice, and look at the history of cable TV in this town and what we did.
So you negotiated the existing contract?
No, the existing contract expired in 2014. I did it back in, shouldn't say we did it back in 92. You guys need to take the existing contract that's in place now, 2014, and compare it to what they're giving you now. And I'll tell you right now, this is all cookie cutter stuff. It's the same that they have in other towns throughout the country. But we're in a different position because we do have areas that are underserved and ignored, and they have been for years. It used to be back in the 90s, you couldn't get them to go across to the Conic State Parkway. And finally, they were able to use boring technology to get underneath and give those people service over there. So, you know what? You need to establish a committee, get these people in there, and realize cable TV is going by the wayway. You know, they're very smart. They package it with bundling. They put in the phones, they put in the internet, cable TV. Ask them to break out that franchise fee. And you know what they're going to tell you? You know, it costs too much. So dig your heels in and negotiate the best deal for the town.
Can we get your comments in writing?
No, that's why I told you to take a pen.
Okay. We'll do our best.
You know what? There's other scribble on here. I'll clean them up and I'll forward them to the
That would be
town
a
clerk.
good idea if you want us to consider them, yeah. It's
Well,
hard.
you know, you also have the recording that goes on here, so you can
Yeah,
do
they
that,
don't
but you
do
know
it-
what?
They don't do it verbatim.
And we don't want you to sit there and pay the hourly fee that it would take you to sit there and get there, but that's why I kind of said, take notes, folks. But I'll do that
Put it in writing. it'll
I'll
help.
do that for the town. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have to piggyback a little bit on one of the things Mr. Hart said, and after thinking that maybe things are pretty much okay, we should go ahead. One thing that started to bother me a lot is that, okay, not every resident has the cable service available to them. And after some very careful thought, I had to say, I cannot give a yay vote on a new contract unless Spectrum is willing to give every single Pleasant Valley resident that wants cable service. I don't care if they have to run a mile of cable to get to their house. You're a Pleasant Valley resident, you're a taxpayer, you should have cable. You can carve that in stone with me, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Supervisor. Gully Stanford, 181 Marshall Road. You may remember I did testify on the 21st of August. First of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Hart for that very comprehensive review. This is the first time we're talking about the issues we should be talking about. My bona fide is I helped negotiate the contract for another city halfway across the country, also in the 1990s. Very familiar with the issues. I'm really going to second what Councilmember O'Hanlon said and what Mr. Hart said, but with just a little elaboration, I'll be as brief as I can be. I did ask on the 21st of August if I could get a list of the dwellings which would be served by the proposed 20 houses, a mile destiny. I heard nothing. Perhaps that's why. Are you the gentleman representing Spectrum? Well, very good. Perhaps we will hear that, because I agree if there is to be a franchise for the town of Pleasant Valley, then there should be universal access. I have neighbors up on Rusky Lane. I think it is ridiculous that given the activity up there, they're not able to get access to the cable. So enough said on that one. Mr. Hart just touched on this, but I would like to underscore that. He said we should get a committee together. I totally agree. Where has the oversight been since 2014, or even before 2014? I had no idea that this contract had been allowed to be lapsed for 9 years. But there really should be some kind of an oversight committee of knowledgeable people from the community who are ensuring that the commitments on both sides in the contract are being met. Then the third piece in here I'd just like to touch on briefly, because there is this whole issue of public access, and forgive me, my memory is not so good as to how this goes. I believe that the town needs to commit to being in the public access business, perhaps set aside a space that could be a studio. But once that commitment is made, and in my former dwelling, the local community made a lot of use of public access and public origination. I don't know if this is addressed in this particular contract, but I believe that should the town commit to public access, then the franchisee actually is committed to providing, or is required to provide, some support. I may be wrong about that, but I would certainly hope that anybody who wanted to be the franchisee for the town of Pleasant Valley, if we need to move forward with public access, public administration, that would be something that is in the interests of the franchisee. And then just finally, and I'm not quite sure how this is addressed, and maybe other witnesses will ask to this, once our town makes a, and I would agree 5 years rather than 10-year commitment, is there any commitment on the franchisee's part to some logical, and maybe that was what you touched on, I didn't quite follow this, some kind of indexing of rising costs, that they can be limited to, I don't know, the inflation index or whatever, because I believe, and I think the attorney will probably inform us that that's a different set of regulation. But just because these questions have not been asked in the past, let's ask them now. This is not just about providing television services this is about our quality of life, it's about public engagement, and it's about our economy as businesses move to Pleasant Valley. They need to know that they're getting the best possible service. And just in closing, yes, absolutely, the library, the town hall, the other buildings, and yes, indeed, the schools. I believe the contract is silent, and we have 3 elementary schools right here. And as I pointed out, I think at a recent meeting, and neighbors will agree, because our 3 schools' headquarters are based in other municipalities, the students of Pleasant Valley need to be given every encouragement we can, because the Arlington schools, the Millbrook schools, the Hyde Park schools, their headquarters, administrative offices, are based in other towns. And that's the jig that they're more likely to dance to. Let's be sure that the learners and the students of Pleasant Valley are well served. Thank you, Mr. Super.
Can I ask you a question? Can you give us, since you have so much experience in this, can you give us an example of one or more municipalities in Dutchess County that have universal service for Cablevision?
I cannot. I'm not the expert here, but perhaps this gentleman will be. I have not done research into other Dutchess County, and I'm not sure that we should be limited in our aspirations to what is possible.
What other municipalities have negotiated that in the contract, if you know?
Well, I think that would be a very good thing to find out before we commit to another 5 or 10 years. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Ed Reno. I live on, where do I live on? Marshall Road, just down the street from John and Gully. I came here for a different reason, but I heard this discussion, and I just want to chime in. Yes to what Gully said, yes to what Mr. Hart said, but they are just rearranging chairs on the Titanic. This whole battle was lost back in 1996 under the Communications Act, which allowed Spectrum, in this case, what's your name, sir? Alex. Spectrum and, for example, Optimum, to cartelize the area. You don't have a choice, particularly for broadband. The secret of cable is not television, it's the internet, okay? yes, people are pulling the cord and they're streaming, but that streaming has to come over cable. You're not going to get it from a satellite. If you lived in New York City, you might get it from the phone company, i.e. Verizon from Fios, but you're not going to get that here anytime soon. They have us so locked up, it's ridiculous. And your margin for negotiating is very narrow. When you start saying, for example, indexing, they'll say, okay, you don't want your Disney and your ESPN, our costs are going up because their charges to us are going up. So fine, tell us which channels you want turned off, you know, if you don't want your prices to go up. What you should be thinking of long term is you should be thinking of getting together with other municipalities and discussing how you can break up this cartel. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight, but you're going to get absolutely nothing out of them as long as they control those pipes to Pleasant Valley, and that's what they do now.
Thank you, sir. Oh, you're welcome. I think we have to wait till
Gary Vader, South Point Turnpike, Pleasant Valley. First thing I would suggest to the attorney, when you face and talk to us, you don't hear it on your microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I've only got two things. I asked at a previous meeting if the expansion included anybody within that or just the paying customers within that area. I haven't heard an answer to that. That's one. Number two, there's been a lot of talk about the franchise fees. They could double them, triple them, and give more money to the town, but guess what? All of us that pay, there's a little thing on there that says franchise fee. We pay the franchise fee. They don't.
I have an answer for you on your first question.
Yep.
Are you talking about the 20, the build-out for 20 homes per mile? Yeah, we checked that out, and it's only the existence of those homes on that, within that mile. They don't all have to sign up in order to provide service.
Thank you.
John Dunn, Netherwood Road. As interesting and worthwhile as the previous speakers were, I would like to just get off the subject for a moment. And I'd like to take a moment, actually, to commend the zoning enforcement officer.
Hold on. We
Yes,
have to, this is public comment for the,
I thought it said agenda.
no. This is not agenda items yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is, you can't, this is all about Spectrum and the franchise fees and all that stuff,
That's fine.
okay?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Norm Applebaum. I live here in Pleasant Valley 30 years now. I've been exploring this issue with Spectrum going back to 2020, and I've been in touch with the PSC like everyone else has. And I was told by two different people who are in charge that other companies are welcome to come in to serve Pleasant Valley. Having spoken to representatives of Verizon, Optimum, Spectrum, Verizon told me in so many words, oh, we can't go to Pleasant Valley. That's not our area that belongs to Spectrum. Optimum told me the same thing and practically laughed at me on the phone. When I spoke to the Public Service Commission, Ms. Mullen told me that anybody can come in here and serve the public, that competition is wanted, so that we, the people, can get a savings. I recently had my bill go up, as sure everyone else here. No notice whatsoever, it just showed up. And I was told that it went up across the country, but there was no notification to any subscribers that it went up and that they had no choice but to either pay it or cut their cord. So I called to see what happened with my bill going up, and that's what I was basically told. My wife and I are retired and on Social Security. I'm a veteran, so I asked, how about, can I get a veteran discount? We don't do that. I said, you don't do that? No. I said, you have no respect for the veterans. I said, well, you know, the CEO of Spectrum is worth right now $114 million. And a lot of the big companies in this country now are starting to give back to people who can't make it on their own. I've reviewed Spectrum, and they haven't made any commitments to anyone else but themselves. I'm certain that they can afford to give a break to senior citizens and veterans in Pleasant Valley and the rest of the places they serve. Last year, as of 9/9 this year, Spectrum has made a profit of $1 billion based on the backs of the people who are getting gouged on a daily basis. So I would hope that when we sign a contract, whenever that is, it's based on the fact that the seniors and the veterans in this community get what they deserve and not get more of the same. Thank you.
Can I just respond to the first thing that you mentioned, because I do have an answer for you on that. The franchise, if it's awarded to Spectrum, and the current franchise awarded to Spectrum, is non-exclusive by its terms and by law. So there is no reason why another cable company can't come in and serve Pleasant Valley. The problem is, and I suspect that it might be true, is that I think that there is some sort of informal agreement among the cable companies that they divide up the areas. And if one cable company has Pleasant Valley, it's no offense, Alex, that the other cable companies will honor that and not come in, but there's no legal prohibition to another cable company or two cable companies coming in and serving Pleasant Valley.
No, I'm quite aware of that, but what you also said is basically they have a mutual agreement.
I have no personal knowledge of that. It's
No,
just,
but you,
it's rumored.
okay.
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I
No, but
suspect,
it certainly looks
because
that
nobody
way.
comes into any of the municipalities that I represent that have cable, we've never had a competing company come in. And I think there's always been that same complaint.
I recently spoke to someone who lives in LaGrange, and she told me that she currently has Spectrum and that Verizon has gone into LaGrange and they're moving into 64 homes in LaGrangeville. So I don't know if Spectrum's aware, but they're all drooling to get a break in their bill. So why they won't come here, I don't understand that part.
I mean, competition usually results in lower costs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry to have to come back. The guy behind me is smiling. Look, the reason they don't come in is because they'd have to lay new cable, okay? And they're not going to do that because it is prohibitively expensive to lay new cable. That's why it won't happen. It happened at the beginning when Roadrunner was the supplier, Time Warner Roadrunner, and they were passing houses like crazy. That's how John's house and my house got hooked up at a time of expansion. But that's over, okay? No cable company's gonna come in and string its own cable next to the cable that Spectrum bought from Time Warner. It's not gonna happen. That's the notion of a cartel. And it's not an agreement, it's an economically enforced agreement, and it's naive to think otherwise. So you're going to have, my suggestion, I don't have a solution to this because it is so complex and so driven by the economics. A quick comment on the gentleman who's a veteran. As a matter of fact, I called Spectrum, and gave them my tale of woe. I'm a handicapped, retired guy, and my bill went up, and I don't happen to be a veteran. And they said, oh, there's a form you can fill out. Fill out that form, and maybe you'll get a break on your bill. Now, I said, is that form means tested? And the guy on the phone said, well, I don't know what you're referring to. Just go get a form. Of course it's means tested. And it's only people with income down, near the poverty level who will get the subsidies that, by the way, have been brought to you, and now John can wince. No Republican has voted for those subsidies. It was all Democrats in Congress who gave you those subsidies as a part of the American Relief Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, but forget that for a moment. Yes, if you're impoverished, you can get a subsidy for your cable bill. These guys love it because it gets them off the hook for the people starving in the streets. But the rest of us continue to pay those fees, and we'll pay those fees as they keep going up because we do want to watch our football games. And we're not going to pull the plug for football games, and that's a question of the cable for the internet. It's not for the TV. Okay?
Anyone else? Alex?
Good evening, residents of Pleasant Valley. Good evening, Supervisor Warren, Town Attorney. Thank you for coming out tonight and sharing your views and your opinions about Spectrum and the cable TV franchise. There are a lot of different issues that were raised. I appreciate all the individuals who came up and raised those issues. I'm going to go through and address those, but I do want to provide a bit of background first that I think will be helpful in considering the franchise. So, as some have alluded to, not only for Pleasant Valley, but for over 1,200 localities in New York State, we sign what are called franchise agreements with different municipalities, towns, villages, et cetera, throughout the state. And essentially what that franchise grants to us by the locality is the use of what are called the rights of way. So that is the land, the air rights, things that are owned by the government that we are given the right to use to lay our cable, to be able to provide the infrastructure over which we provide cable TV service. We also provide other services over that same network that we provide cable TV. The franchise is only for cable TV. It's laid out in the federal law. It dates back decades, even before things like the internet were commonplace. But we do provide, obviously, internet service, mobile phone service, landline service, other services. Much of those services are provided over our cable TV network. So it is kind of a backdoor to the other services that we provide, but it is limited to cable TV. There are thousands of people in Pleasant Valley who have access to our network, and by access I mean they have the ability to order the service if they choose to.
A subset of those actually order cable TV service. More people order internet than cable TV. Some have landline phone service, and a couple hundred have mobile service, which is just something we started offering in the last couple of years. As far as Spectrum goes, Spectrum's the brand name for the services that we offer. The company is Charter Communications. It merged with Time Warner Cable in 2016. That was something that was approved by the New York State Public Service Commission. So we as a company, as Charter, have been operating here since 2016, since that merger with Time Warner Cable. Obviously, the cable franchise that we inherited predates our merger with Time Warner Cable. So that's kind of the lay of the land, if you will. And I'll go through some of the points that were raised by different individuals. I do want to note, I actually came before this town in February of 2022. And that was about 18 months ago. Podium was on the other side, I think, then. But we have actually, John and I have spoken on and off since then. Warren and I, have been negotiating the contract for months. So I don't want anyone to think they're not effectively represented. The fact that we haven't even reached an agreement, and I've come here twice, tells you that they're, being tough negotiators. Warren negotiates for many localities that I work with, so he has that perspective across many different places. And it's always a fair but tough negotiation with him. That said, it's obviously up to the town who does the negotiating, whether there should be a committee, whether you're entrusting the supervisor and the council to do the work. We're open to whatever setup you folks prefer. Obviously, I represent the company. We want to renew the franchise, but we continue to operate under the terms of the franchise regardless. We've been doing that since 2014. I'd like to get it done, but that said, I'm not pushing or rushing anyone to do something that they don't feel comfortable with. We do have a presumptive right to a franchise renewal. That means because we've invested our infrastructure here, because we're an existing company, we have thousands of customers, we do have a presumptive right of renewal. But as I mentioned, we're certainly want to address all the issues that have been raised. I know I've made an effort to do that in the past when questions were raised at the last hearing in February 2022. I provided tonight to John a list of 52 homes that we have connected in the last 5 years. Those are homes that did not have the network coming to their door or even in some cases their street. And I know some folks raised that issue tonight. As far as the franchise goes, under this franchise that Warren negotiated, the particular provision he negotiated at 20 homes per cable mile, that's the density requirement. So we would be required under the franchise to build out to any home, extend our network to any home where there are 20 homes per cable mile, per aerial cable mile. So it's not the same as a mile as a crow flies, but it's essentially down a road where we run our cable, usually on the telephone lines. That density provision is far below than what's required by the state regulation, by the PSC, which is 35. So I said to you earlier, the town's been, representing you. That's the lowest I've seen us go on any local franchise. Some of the individuals who came up here mentioned the costs. It is cost prohibitive to connect homes where there's not a lot of density. That's why it hasn't been done in years past. Obviously, I think with COVID and the reliance on the internet, there's been a real push to connect people because there's a high need, for all the things we're now doing remotely, but also because, the government has provided funding for it. And there is funding that's still coming down through the Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and it's coming through the state. And I do believe we'll get to a place where every home in Pleasant Valley, in fact, every home in the state, I think many, if not most, if not all, could be connected in the coming years. There is a map. A map was raised as one of the questions or things that it was felt the town should have. The New York State Public Service Commission created a map that shows any address in the state, whether it's connected or not, and who the service providers are. You can go onto their website. Just Google New York State PSC broadband map. We helped contribute to make that map. So did other providers. We provided our data as to what we had in terms of connected addresses. So their data shows that 97.5% of this town is connected. And by that I mean they have the ability to order the service. It doesn't mean they do, but the network is there. So 2.5% do not. Question was raised about the exact addresses. I don't have that information with me tonight. I could ask about it. I heard a particular road raised. Rusky Lane? I can certainly look that up. If there are addresses you want to give to John, I can look up and, you know, we're required. We can do a survey and estimate the cost to build out to those homes. I will tell you that probably with the 2.5% that are left, it's probably very expensive. I would guess 10, 20, maybe 20,000, maybe more for some of those homes. That's how expensive they are. Because you're talking about probably the last set of homes that are not connected and probably in very remote and distant from other homes. That said, for a lot of the build out we do, we will subsidize a homeowner. Usually the gap is that the subsidy we're providing versus what the homeowner can also contribute is not enough. And I think that those homes will be addressed by the state's money that's now flowing through. So let me go through some of the other concerns that were raised. On price, price is always something that's raised. We do have a number of programs, including for veterans. The main program that we participate in is called the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's a really great program. It's for all kinds of different beneficiaries of different programs, including SNAP, Medicaid, veterans programs, essentially any programs that often are people who are lower income benefit from. But it really goes up into the middle class. It's up to 200% of the poverty line. So just looking at the data that's on the federal government's website, for a family of two, that's almost $40,000. So if you're a family that's earning a family of two up to 40,000 roughly, it's 39. A family of four up to 60,000. You should look at the Affordable Connectivity Program. You can call us, and we can help you to enroll in that. It takes $30 off of your bill. And if you don't currently have service with us, what the government got in return is we created a lower price program so that people can get internet for $30 with the $30 discount. So that program is there. Please do take advantage of it. If you have a bundled offering, whether you have cable TV or mobile or landline mix with internet service, you can still get $30 off your internet service. The bundled services, obviously, as a company, we want to get as much business from you as possible. We want to offer landline, we want to offer phone, we want to offer internet, cable TV. So we tend to bundle these services together, and they're cheaper when you buy them together. That's really the best way to lower the costs. I'm not going to stand before you tonight and say it's cheap. I know, people have bills that can be $200 for internet and cable TV service. And that's a lot of money to a lot of folks. But I will say we think we offer important services that people use a lot, sometimes several hours a day. And we think, if you look at the price and look at how much it's used and look at how much the speed has increased over the years, which it has dramatically in the last 10, 20 years, from dial-up service to, now playing videos and movies and streaming those things, we think the service is very well worth it. A couple other items that were raised. Price controls. Our company believes that, localities, even states, cannot, set the price of our services. That's something that's done by the federal government, if they choose to do that. Interstate commerce was mentioned here tonight. That makes it the province of the federal government. So that's not something that's touched on in the franchise agreement. But as I mentioned, I think the main lever to really address the prices for people who have struggled to afford the service is the Affordable Connectivity Program that I raised. Regarding the length of the term of the franchise, we like to do 15-year agreements, just because these are, we've been working at it 18 months now. It's a long time to just get a 5-year agreement. I don't think our company would do less than 10 years. Part of that is because we have to start the process and send a letter 2 to 3 years before the franchise even expires, and it can be a long, drawn-out process. So we would rather do it for a longer period. I know some people tonight have raised the fate of cable TV services. As I mentioned, over our network, we offer all these different services, but we think cable TV is going to be here certainly 10 years from now, even longer. What we believe is that it might change what it looks like. And you may have seen the news in recent weeks with Disney. A lot of the cost increases that we pass on to customers are driven by the program, the content. Companies like Disney and others who create the content, we have to purchase it from them to provide over our network. And if they raise the cost is raised for cable TV. And so, part of the agreement that we reached with Disney after a protracted negotiation was to be able to offer their content in different ways. So, for example, if you have internet, you can now get Disney Plus and ESPN Plus as an app on your television without having cable TV service, but you'll have internet service plus these, kind of streaming apps. We also, as part of that agreement with Disney, we're able to obtain from them, if you pay for cable TV service and you have ESPN on your cable TV, you can also get the Disney apps that offer other content, and you don't have to pay extra for them, because we felt people were paying twice. They were paying for cable TV, and then they had to pay separately if they wanted additional content on the apps. So I think you're going to see these streaming apps and different content that's been disaggregated. It's going to kind of merge with cable TV and with internet and be offered in different forms. I mean, that's kind of our plan and idea for changing the way cable TV looks, so that consumers have more choice and it's more attractive, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to watch, and in different ways, whether it be streaming over the internet or through your cable TV. On the monopoly issue, we do not have a monopoly. We don't have a monopoly in Pleasant Valley. We don't have a monopoly in pretty much any place I've looked at in New York State, and I'm a senior director for the whole state. There's a site, I encourage you all to go. It's an independent site. We don't run it. It's called Broadband Now. If you look it up on the internet, you can type in your zip code. My company won't like that I'm telling you this, but it shows you all the providers for that zip code. And for Pleasant Valley, there's more than 5. Verizon is here. They don't cover the whole area. They cover less than us. Optimum, which is Altice, they're also here. There's several different satellite providers, including Starlink, which happens to be run by the richest person in the world. So I always find it amusing when people say that we're a monopoly when we compete against Elon Musk, who owns Starlink. So there are choices. There's wireline service, which we have the most coverage area of. There's also what's called wireless and the satellite. So there are different options. And so I encourage you to look at them, because we think we can compete with anyone. You'll see that the pricing is different but comparable in many ways. And that goes to what was raised here by one of the individuals who spoke, and that is the reason isn't, there's no handshake agreement between the companies. That would probably be illegal. We don't collude to control prices. It's when one company already has market share, another company looks at, well, it's going to cost a lot of money to go in and build our infrastructure. How many customers are we actually going to get? And That's how they make decisions. And because putting forth a cable TV network or a network over which we provide these services is very expensive. We spend billions of dollars a year across the country. You know, someone spoke about billions in profit, but we also spend billions maintaining our network, building out to new homes. It's a very capital-intensive industry. And so a company's not going to go into an area unless they believe they can get a certain number of customers. You could build out to thousands of homes, and they may not order the service. You know, the take rate, so to speak, is not 100%. It's not even close to that, because some homes won't order the service at all. So you have to factor that all in, and that's what dictates whether a company goes into a particular area, not a backroom deal. It's the economics, as was said. So I'll stop there because I've been talking for a long time. I'm happy to answer any additional questions anyone may have. You know, as far as particular provisions go or addresses that you feel like need to be connected, please provide them to John or Warren. I'm happy to talk to them directly or anyone else about build out or any of these other issues that we raised. You know, we do try to negotiate in good faith. We don't take any customers for granted, and you know, the reason I drive here on a rainy night is we want to hear what you say, and we do appreciate your thoughts on our services. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. What was the number, you put a number out there of how many homes you've added or connected or provided service in the last 5 years?
It was 52, and I provided a list to
Okay.
John.
So 52. Is that homes that already existed 5 years ago? Are you taking out any new built homes that technically didn't have service? Part of that?
I need to check with my field operations team. I believe all those homes, I asked them for a list of homes that we built out our network to. I believe that's, so that would probably be either that it's below the density requirements in the franchise, and we did that because we had individual conversations with customers, or I should say not customers, but residents who called us and wanted service, or it was part of the franchise density requirement and we built out. I need to check on what the criteria was for that.
Yeah, I'm just,
It may be a mix of both. It could be, it's possible that it's the ones beyond the franchise
yeah, so
requirement.
These look like new homes that were built. They probably already had service, because I mean, we're talking Forest Valley, Salt Point. These are major roads. So to get up here and say that you added 52 homes service-wise, I mean, it looks like they were homes that were built. So I personally don't believe you really expanded. You didn't expand into any of the neighborhoods like Rusky Lane, or there's another one across the Taconic there. These look like they're just homes that were built in the last 5 years and you added service to them. You were talking about funding and expansion, and obviously a lot has changed in the last 5 years with where we're at with internet and everybody's using streaming. Did Spectrum accept any grants or any funding from the federal government you were saying you believe it's going to be 100% service from that. Did you guys accept any funding and specifically dedicate it to Pleasant Valley?
We haven't received any funding that I'm aware of for Pleasant Valley from the government for build out. The way those programs work is there's basically there's at least 3 programs that I'm aware of. One is the American Recovery Act, ARPA. All towns and villages got ARPA funds. We've worked with some towns. I did an agreement with the town of Marbletown, for example. We've done some with the town of Amsterdam. There are villages and towns throughout the state that we've done agreements with where they use their ARPA funds for build out, and we provided a subsidy to match what they provided, that was provided by the federal government. But most of the money is being filtered through the state, through the Economic Development Agency for the state, ESDC, and that program is still being structured, and the money is still flowing through, and it probably won't get distributed until 2024. But that's something that's controlled by the state. It could impact, it probably will impact many towns and villages, Pleasant Valley and others. because they're working off the PSC map that has the unserved on it. There are, according to the state comptroller, about 140,000 unserved homes in New York State. And so I believe the state will seek to connect those homes, but that's something that where they're establishing the program and they're creating the, they're controlling the distribution of the funds. It will likely be a competitive bid process where different providers will bid to win the work. I don't know to what extent or what it will look like in terms of involving the local voice in that process. I'm pretty certain they're going to seek to have local input. I just don't know what it will look like yet.
Okay, and the 20 homes per mile, is that homes that are built, or are we counting parcels? How do you guys calculate that? So like, let's say I do a subdivision and I'm gonna put a bunch of homes in, but we start in the back and it's a mile long, but I'm gonna put, is it based off of parcels or are you basing it off of actually built homes?
Yeah, I'd have to check on that. Like you're saying, for example, if you took one home and divided it into 4, does that now count as 4 homes? I'd have to check
Well,
to
because
see
we
how
have
that's
a lot
handled.
of empty parcels in our town, so I'm trying to visualize, if we have a road that's a mile long and we have 4 homes on it, but there's 30 parcels, do those parcels count as homes, or are you physically going out and looking to make sure there's a structure?
We do the latter. I know that.
Okay.
We're definitely looking at, if something's, I'm just thinking of examples that I've experienced, a campsite or a house that's in total disrepair.
Okay. And then, is there any availability to some of the residents' points of adding town hall, the schools, the library? Right now it's 4 accounts, and the way we came up with it was trying to pick the top 4 that we thought we could use. But, I mean, the infrastructure's already there, you're already providing that. It's kind of a small drop in the bucket for everything, sort of saying.
Yeah, I would say on the complementary accounts, generally what we do is, our kind of general policy is we connect government buildings like town hall. We connect firehouses and police departments. We've moved away from schools. But if you want to put in the request, we look at the franchise in its totality in terms of the requests of the town, and when considering what we'll provide.
And I don't know if you can legally do it because it's a cable franchise agreement, but has there ever been a time where you've included internet service for those same locations? So let's say we stayed with the 4 locations. Would you ever, in any other negotiations, include the internet as well?
I would say
Or
it's
would you be open to that?
It's probably very unlikely. These are cable TV franchise agreements. There's a great reluctance on our part to mix in services because it's really under the law limited to cable TV. Yes, we offer these other services over our network, but we don't typically include internet in any way within the cable TV franchise.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're at a point where we can close the public hearing.
Okay.
The negotiations will continue.
Okay.
I'm going to wait till I get the list. I took some notes, but I'm not a stenographer, from Chris to see what points he raised that we can talk about. There are some areas which I'd like to, you and I will go over. I would like to get a copy of the original map when the first franchise came in, to see, because normally when you do your first franchise, you have a build-out requirement. I do want it, we couldn't find it. I don't know if you can get that for us.
I'll
but
see if we can find it.
I want to see if the original build-out requirement was adhered to. It probably was, but I just want to make sure. And if I could get a copy of the original contract prior to 2014, that would be great. And I don't know whether our town clerk can find that.
I have a copy of that. I can give it to you tonight.
Yeah, if you can get that to us. The PEG, you and I are going to discuss that further. Would like to see, if possible, some more money. The contract calls for $10,000 in 2 installments, one after 5 years, another after another 5 years. I'll be talking to you about increasing that amount, or at least increasing the payment for PEG. We don't have a public access channel at this point, but the town may in the future. I've always had concerns about the complimentary service that's being provided, that has been provided, and I had communicated with the town board members. I will re-communicate, because I do think that our first priority should be the town hall, not to provide free internet, free cable to the firehouse and to the police department in lieu of providing it to the town. So we may want to restructure that. As far as a committee is concerned, I would welcome if the town board appointed a committee to oversee the Cablevision contract. We've done that in other towns, and it's worked fairly well. It would not be put into the contract, but it would be something that the committee could meet on a periodic basis, so we should think about that. If there's any change in the law, I think that's covered by a provision in the contract, which automatically incorporates any changes in federal or state law, but I'll take another look at that. And there's the 10-year term, we negotiated it down from 15 years. I've never seen a cable contract of 5 years, so I don't hold out any hope that we're going to be able to do that. But we'll be talking about those provisions. And so if we could close the public hearing and then...
Still open.
Go ahead.
Hi, Katrina Maloney, 22 Coachman. I'm not an expert at all. I have no experience, but I would just like to speak to what Alex has said. 2.5% of residents, that would cost them about $4.5 million to give every single resident internet service based on his estimate of $20,000. Doesn't seem that much considering what the CEO was claimed to make, noted by another resident. And then a presumptive right for contract renewal. But what if we don't? What if we don't renew? Then what happens?
Is that your last question?
No. Well, it's my last question. It's my last question, but I do have another statement, which is $30 for people who are on the poverty level seems very low. And I feel like Spectrum should be ashamed of that, actually. And I'm not on the poverty level, thankfully, but I know a lot of residents probably are. And if you make $40,000 a year with a family, your $30 savings a month isn't going to do you very much. So that is all of my comment. I would like an answer to the question, though, about what if we don't renew? What happens?
Yeah, that's uncharted, not to use upon uncharted waters here. The original cable contract, the one in existence, continues in effect. It's continued since 2014. I don't know whether there is an expiration date on that. I can check with the Public Service Commission, or Alex may know that. But at this point, we're continuing under the 2014. But I don't think it's ad infinitum. I think that there would probably be a cutoff period. So we do have to negotiate in good faith with the cable company to try to come to terms. And there have been substantial improvements in the contract from the previous, so we would like to incorporate those. Just want to remind you, we're talking about cable service, not internet service.
Yes, but I get my internet through the cable.
Oh.
And I actually get my phone through my internet,
Right.
so, including my house phone.
Right.
So, anyway, thank you.
You want?
Thank you.
So we can close the public hearing.
Can I just comment quickly on two things?
Sure.
I forgot to mention on the franchise fees, which was raised previously. So in 2022, we, and by that I mean collectively, everybody, $180,000 in franchise fees went to the town. And as was mentioned, that's something that's passed on to the consumers, but it is like a tax, if you will, a fee on our services. I mean, our preference would be to have no franchise fees, which, believe it or not, occasionally towns will do that. But it is something that does help the town, ultimately by going to the town government to use for services that benefit the town residents.
Thank you. Last call for anyone who wants to say anything on this topic before we close it. Not seeing any, I move that we close this portion of the meeting, the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Going forward, I'm in receipt and acceptance of the minutes of workshop meeting on 9/6/23. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All official correspondence are on file at the town clerk's office. Presentations. Tonight, 10A, the town clerk presentation of the supervisor's budget to the board. So just to remind you how this process works, so that I don't get a million calls, I put together, myself and the bookkeeper put together a preliminary budget, okay? One that's a starting point. It's one that's going to be dissected, it's going to be taken apart, but the board gets it tonight. They now get presented what they call the supervisor's budget, okay? It's also the default budget. So if this board cannot agree on anything and we don't get it in on time, this is the budget that is sent to the county. So it's just a preliminary budget. It's for the board to digest and pick apart. It's a jumping off point, so to speak. And you'll get to hear more about that when we have our budget meetings and see where it came out. Thank you, Alex, for coming, by the way. Be safe going home. Sounds like it stopped raining.
Thanks again. If anyone wants to contact me,
So at this time, I'd like to have the town clerk please present the supervisor's budget. I have one. Thank you very much. At this point in time, we'd like to open the meeting up to the public for agenda items only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, Chris Hart, Smith Road again. We're going to make this real quick. Again, get your pens out. Warren, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my notes to the town clerk as a matter of record this evening, so you have them. Michael, thank you for your comments. If you put together a committee, reach out for me, I'll help you. Items 13B and C, the contract. Some concerns. Article 14, prevailing rate. Did the town provide the approved work class rates to the bidders for this project, for these projects?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what he said.
Can you repeat the question, Chris?
Items 13B and C on the agenda, your contracts. In the contract, Article 14, prevailing rate. Did the town provide the approved work class rates to the bidders for these projects?
I believe in the RFP they were, right?
Yeah,
Correct?
I think
I looked at the RFP, I didn't see any.
They're publicly available, but,
Is there a provision for certified payroll to be provided with the vouchers for payment? I didn't see that in the contract.
well, they have to comply with the law.
But the town also has to certify that, make sure that they are complying before we pay out. Those are public monies. It's our responsibility to make sure they turn in a certified payroll.
We do this a lot, yeah.
So do I, and it's not in the contract. On a side note, are we doing that for the perform work under Article 9, labor laws for the service contracts, mowing, cleaning? Are we doing certified payrolls for those?
We can check with the bookkeeper.
I
but
think you should.
Sure, yeah.
No provision for any retainage in these contracts to protect the town. Nothing. I didn't see that in the contracts. Was the required licensing for this work verified? Not sure. 13C, there was a public was there a public deliberation in regards to awarding this contract, as there's no written explanation in the resolution explaining why the higher cost vendor was selected. That's in contract 13C. Also there in Article 1, the location for the work to be performed is not 2410 Route 44, it's the highway garage located on Sherrill Road, so that's incorrect. Why is the town requiring a one-year warranty in the contract when the vendor's offering a 5-year material warranty? Shouldn't that be amended to the contract as well? Moving down the agenda items to 14C, why are you having this discussion after potentially taking action on item 13C? I don't think you're ready here with these resolutions and contracts. I think you gotta go back and do your homework.
Wait, can you repeat? You're going really fast with the numbers here and trying to keep up with you here. What was the last one that you just said?
The last one.
I'm trying to flip through my packet, and
I understand,
it's
Michael.
hard to keep up.
14C is a discussion about the highway security cameras and garage. That's after.
13C,
No,
okay.
No, 14C in the, on the agenda that was handed out tonight. So it's after 13C. So you're having a discussion after you've potentially taken action.
I see what, yeah. So he's saying, yeah, you're talking about the resolution okay.
You're having a discussion
I got what
after
you're
you've taken action, that's all. Moving right along. 14B, financing the compactor. I'm not sure what this discussion will entail, but generally speaking, you guys budget for a project. You define the scope, what the town will be providing, what you expect the contract to provide. You put together a package, you put out a bid. You review the bids, you review the project for compliance, and make sure it's within the budgeted amount. You make changes if adjustment, you award the project and pay upon acceptance and completion. Why are we talking about financing when we haven't even put this thing out for bid? I don't understand, unless it's the verbiage. I don't know what your conversation's gonna be, but I just wanna bring that procedure up, that is the way it should be done. Let's get to the big one here. Signs. I understand there's a lot of discussion about political signs, all types of signs. Let's face it, folks, it's the silly season, okay? It's the political season. But when you sit down and you break down the sign law, you got some issues, and you got some problems. You got some people that are lined up waiting to sue this town, and I don't want to see that happen, okay? First and foremost, it's selective enforcement. We still have Pleasant Valley weekend signs up that haven't been taken down. There's signs over in the town of Hyde Park for some of the candidates that are running. This law affects both parties, okay? And that is no signs in any right-of-way. In this town, you have 4 types of roads: state road, county road, a town road by deed, and a town road by use. All of them have different requirements for right-of-way. Who's gonna go out and enforce the right-of-way? And who's gonna go tell the resident, guess what, you can't have that sign out at the end of your property along Salt Pine Turnpike because it's in the right-of-way? You know what? As lawyers will often tell you, there's a flaw in the law, and this one has quite a few. So here's my suggestion. Go into executive meeting tonight, decide whether you guys want to waive enforcement of the signs in a right-of-way until you can go back, adjust the law, make it right and fair for everybody, or whether you want to dig your heels in and defend the lawsuit. Any good lawyer will tell you it's your job not to defend the lawsuit, but to keep you from getting involved in one. This is stupid stuff. Signs do not define an election. Issues do. Don't let this become an issue. Do the right thing. I see you've added, at the end, a transfer of $12,000 for park improvements. I think it's great, but folks, what are the improvements? Where's the supporting documentation that says what you're spending $12,000 for? I don't see it. I don't see any of that stuff. You gotta tighten it up. We gotta have transparency here. Let's see what we can do, huh? I'll turn my notes in from the previous public hearing. Warren, you can get a hold of me through Mike or John. Willing to help you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Gary Veter, Saw Point Turnpike, Pleasant Valley. Signs have become a plague in the town of Pleasant Valley. I will mention Councilman Reifenberg at the last meeting had a very nice presentation on what he thought we should do with the signs. I compliment you on your thought and your presentation. What's going on now is nowhere near what it's absolute bedlam. I have run for office, I had signs. Putting them on private property should be allowed. That's a statement of that person's thing. But when I come down West Road and I look at the cemetery and their signs are there by the dozens, that's not necessary. Signs that are in such large groups that you can't read one or two in a right-of-way is dumb. I don't know, I don't have a real answer to that right now because, as was said before, this is the silly season. Second thing, and I brought this up before and I showed you pictures. It's a small amount of money, but seal coating Helen Aldrich Park parking lot, it doesn't need it. If you're doing it to cover up the markings that have been painted on the pavement, if that's the reason for doing it, it probably won't work. About 12 years ago, I had my granddaughters painting the fence I had in my yard. They decided to paint my driveway too. 12 years later, that paint still shows through. So if your reason for doing the Helen Aldrich Park lot is to cover up what's been painted on there, I'm not sure that that contract covers that. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Dunn, Netherwood Road. To repeat what I started to say before, I'd like to take a moment to commend the zoning enforcement officer as well as the building inspector, because I think they've used a lot of due diligence and common sense, frankly, in helping this town to avoid a possible lawsuit, as Mr. Hart referred to, okay? And they've done that even at the risk of losing their own jobs. And I certainly appreciate it, and I think this town should appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Gully Stanford, 181 Marshall Road. As perhaps the board will remember, I took to this microphone at your July the 17th meeting to commend the board on the unanimous approval of those present and voting of Mr. Reifenberg's motion to enforce the town code, which prohibits the posting of political signs on public rights of way, a code adopted, as I understand it, by a very respectable majority some 14 or 15 years ago, some of whom are still in public office. So I'm addressing 14C, of course, forgive me. As many residents have gratefully noted, our highways have been, to a great extent, spared the pestilential proliferation of yard signs indiscriminately plastered all over our town until last week. Indeed, the few violations occurring between July the 17th and August the 30th were promptly taken care of by the responsible parties. And as I've assured the supervisor, the town board, the zoning administrator, the building inspector, the campaigns with which I am associated have been scrupulous in their observance of the code. Unfortunately, that has not been the practice of certain candidates, at least one of whom was present at the July 17th meeting and at that time expressed no opposition to the code's enforcement. And then last Wednesday, a sort of tidal wave of actually two waves of improperly placed yard signs began to litter our public intersections. As advised, I've submitted a formal complaint on September the 1st. It's now September the 18th. Some clearing, and I do thank the code enforcement officer for their work, for their work. Some clearing indeed was done. Mr. Lambert put out an email last Friday about a complaint received from a private property owner. I can assure you I immediately took care of the signs, of the one sign for which I was responsible. All the others remain in place. So for those of us who choose to respect the law and order of this town, this behavior is, well, it's offensive. We're trying to keep a level playing field, as Mr. Fumo and Mr. Lambert pointed out to me. Let's be equitable, and by the way, that's what the Supreme Court ruling says, which permits the action taken by this board, and by the way, by the very conservative predecessors who passed the code in the first place. So I rise to urge you, yes, it's complicated, and to Mr. Hart's point, I do believe that responsible people can come, as the supervisor and I did for at least 5 weeks over this, can come to a mutually acceptable agreement so we don't have this continued proliferation of improperly placed yard signs. I'm just going to ask those in this room, those who support the enforcement of the code as adopted and as resolved in July the 17th, if you would just stand for a moment to indicate whether you support this town board in their adoption of the code and the enforcement of the code.
Well, that's a legal action, and you can't do that.
Okay.
You can't do that.
I in that case, in hindsight, Mr. Supervisor, I know ignorantia legis neminem excusat, but where I come from, it has never been advised to me that in New York, such a gesture of support was illegal. Therefore,
We're not a body that does those kind of
I apologize. Well, having served on numerous elected bodies, this is a first for me, and I will apologize to those whom I unintentionally offended. However, it is clear that there are those who intend to observe the code as adopted and those who intend to continue to violate it. And I would hope that we would agree, and I pass on my respects to the zoning enforcement officers, so I think they're doing the very best possible job they can. So I'll agree with Mr. Hart on this. Let's at least make an effort to convince our neighbors that elections are about issues, about service, about results, and let's drop this petty posturing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Good evening. Brian Aldridge, Margaret Court. There was a discussion earlier this year on the possibility of restricting when you could or couldn't put up political advertising signs. That was reasonable. October 1st, I could live with that. And as somebody who has had their signs stolen illegally, picked up by an individual who had no authority on the town's behalf to steal my signs, which is private property. You're talking about fairness? I'm sorry, sir. You went ahead and did something that I wouldn't do. When I got into this
Okay.
election, hold on, no.
Stop.
He
I'm
had
gonna-
his say, and I'm sorry.
This should be a conversation with
This-
us, though,
this-
not another
this-
constituent.
Okay.
Yeah, this is,
My whole thing was I was going to do this honorably, respectfully, and stick to the issues of the office that I'm running for. I had a conversation with Mr. Baxter earlier this year on that very subject. We both agreed to that. I had planned on doing that. This is not what it's coming down to. And if you're going to have a discussion on how you want to legalize or control signs, you have two members of this board currently, Mr. Mazzella, Mrs. Albrecht, they're running for public office as well. Therefore, they should recuse themselves from any part of this discussion because of a conflict of interest, a possible ethics violation, and possibly a legal action. Therefore, this whole thing, you can either go in executive session, like Mr. Hart said, suspend it for 90 days, come back, revisit it, or you've got to clarify what's what. How can you tell the state or the county that you're controlling their right-of-ways? You have no authority on that. So going forward, something's got to be clarified here. It's been for decades. You're going to selectively enforce this, or are you going to take civic organizations, church organizations, businesses, charities, and you're going to tell them you can't put their signs up either? If you're going to do it, it's got to go all around. It's all or nothing.
thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else?
Katrina Maloney, Coachman Way. I'm new to this town. Seems like people are really angry about the political signs. I personally just don't like signs in my town. I think it looks trashy, and they get left there, and they get left up. We have rules for businesses about this type of signs that they can have. So to see signs, I know that when we had our last election, they were everywhere. So what, I don't know, it doesn't matter which side you're on, or whether you want to get rid of all signs, not just political signs, but I think as a town, it doesn't look nice, and we're all here to improve our town and make it a nicer town. We want to bring more businesses in, more residents in, and we're not going to be able to do that by fighting with each other and having trash everywhere, which, you know, some of the signs get left, including Pleasant Valley Weekend, which I was a committee member on. So, you know, I don't know who put the signs out. I wasn't in charge of it, but I did notice that there were still signs left, and I thought it didn't look very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? It's a race.
Phil Apicino, Ravine Road. The sign issue, I don't get it. Half the people who are running have no problem adhering to the sign rule. I don't understand why we're threatening lawsuits and actions. I don't see where that takes place. Does this mean we're just going to ignore all our zoning codes and our building codes and we could just do whatever we want in this town? I don't get it. I just don't get why we're doing this. You know, let's run on issues and not where we're putting signs and where they should be and where they shouldn't be. Our code says signs, political signs on private property only. I can live with that. I don't understand why we're threatening lawsuits. It shouldn't come down to that. It should come down to, you're going to swear, if you're lucky enough to get elected, you're going to take an oath that you're going to enforce the codes in this town. So how can you break the codes and you haven't been elected? I'm sorry. I don't get it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just make a point of order for the supervisor to remind everybody that no matter what side of the issue you're on, you're not supposed to be clapping or doing anything like that, please?
Let's just keep it to the
It
comments.
doesn't help.
Dan Deegan, Oxford Road, Pleasant Valley. So the first hour of this meeting, we saw real issues. And it was powerful because we were all united. We were all united, right? It's nice. And we have these certain issues, like Spectrum, he couldn't have got out here fast enough. He said, I think we should keep talking about this because I don't think we're done with that issue yet as a town. I don't think we're done with that. I think we can do better there. We can fight harder. About the sign, and really, so what I bring that up is because we have real issues. You know, we don't want to come here and talk about lawn signs, let's be honest. And I don't want to be up here talking about lawn signs. I want to give a compliment to this board, and I want to give a compliment to the candidates, all of us. I think right now I'm speaking as a candidate. It's different. I ran 2 years ago. Everybody can agree it was different then. The way these meetings are operating, it's more positive now. Even though we got a little bit into it here, that's nothing like what this town has seen, right? We can all admit it was way worse before. And anybody who went to Pleasant Valley weekend, it was different. It was amazing. The candidates on opposite sides were actually mingling and talking to each other. The people in the town, they didn't know what was going on. I mean, we can be civil. And what this board has done, and credit to you, Mr. Delvecchio, you've done something here where you've kind of put your foot down and said, we can argue passionately, but we can still be civil about it. So when this little dust up, and frankly, when I ran 2 years ago, I hated it. I had my signs everywhere. It was annoying. I put them up, they'd get stolen. I didn't steal anybody's, but people were taking mine. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's just silliness. And it's really disheartening. Like, who's doing that, you know? And if it happened to other people, I'm sorry for you. I know what that feels like. So I was guilty of breaking the code 2 years ago, and I'm gonna go to jail because I said it on recording. But this year I thought it was good because we would just kind of get away from that, and I haven't had any signs stolen, not one. So that worked. I figured there would be gray areas. I'm not a lawyer. I don't care. I have other things to do. I'm doing this for other reasons. I'm not going to read the code about stupid lawn signs. I have other things to do. And so does everybody else. But I figured there'd be some gray areas. Fair enough. I don't care. Right away is private. Okay. And there were a couple that popped up, and then like a leader, like a group of leaders and like fair candidates, we put a stop to it. The signs actually went away. So in fairness, I think it was actually some of the out-of-town candidates that came up and put in areas where there may have been violations, and now that they're now. I honestly don't care one way or the other. If there are signs that we're allowing, I'm going to put mine back there. If we're not, fine. I don't really care. But I want to leave on the fact that we are capable of working together, and we have other issues. We have other issues. I'm going to pivot for a second. He mentioned something about ARPA money. He mentioned about matching funds. I'm wondering if we unite with other towns, we pool ARPA money, and we say, okay, on the towns that border Pleasant Valley, how much would it cost? I have no idea what this costs. If anybody has an idea, we should talk about that. But what would it cost to bring a competitive vendor in? We'll match them, one-to-one up to a certain amount with our ARPA funds with these other pooled money. We need to bring some competition in here. But what was going on here, that does not seem right. I think people use Pleasant Valley, they take advantage of us because we're so busy fighting about lawn signs that we don't unite on issues where we can actually get something done. But woe is the organization that ever has Pleasant Valley united against that organization. They're in trouble, because if we ever stop fighting against each other, we can actually get some really good things done here. So even though I don't know where this is going to end, I don't really care. But this has been way better than it was 2 years ago, and we have it in us to work together. Red, blue, it doesn't matter. We have it in us to work together, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Don't do that. We are not a body that, what do they call that? Caucuses. So that's not how we do it, okay? It's okay. It's all right. You're expressing yourself. That's fine. Anyone else? Agenda items only.
Hearing none,
Hearing none.
I'll move that we close the meeting to the public.
I move that we close the meeting to the public. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Supervisor, since it's
I
gone
know you
for
want a
9
break.
o'clock-
I know.
I make a motion that we go into a 5-minute recess.
I second the motion. 5-minute recess. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Some of us are on pills, and we have to take care of things.
All in favor? We have to vote. We have to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're coming up very shortly. And you are on the agenda, so... So you're not done. We had all kinds of glitches with our computer system. Some things made it onto the agenda, some things didn't. You're on the agenda. You're still here. So.
Okay. Joanna Long. Okay. I'll make sure Warren knows.
I mean, I'm not sure if the, some of those things you mentioned, I never had a book.
Like the certified payrolls? Yeah, but it's all in the law, and the contract refers to the law.
Were you planning to be on it? Listen, so many different things are all construed tonight. By all means, I'll call upon you to do a report, by all means. We can make another modification real quickly to the... Right. Didn't know you were coming. I know. Okay, we'd like to bring the meeting back to order, please. Recess is over. Okay, call the meeting back to order. New business discussions, discussion for dates for the budget. We've had a kind of like a pre-discussion on this already, where we've kind of decided that mostly the Mondays coming up,
I guess so.
we're all good, about an hour prior to the meetings. Is that good for everyone still?
Yes, starting in October, or are we doing any in September? or-
Well, this is the last meeting in September.
Like, are you talking like the 30th of September starting them, or are we not doing it till October?
So,
Oh,
we
sorry.
can do, let's see, September 30th is
Sorry, I meant the 25th.
Saturday.
the 25th. We could do the 25th if you'd like to.
How many meetings are you planning?
I'm figuring we need at least 3, but definitely the 2nd and the 16th at 6 PM on both of those dates.
So can we do the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th?
The 9th is Columbus Day, just for those that.
9th is Columbus Day, yeah, that's no good. And I'm not sure about the 25th, because we may have to advertise that, and it might not be under.
Yeah, I can't make the 25th, but
So-
that doesn't mean much.
So let's shoot for the 2nd, October 2nd. Everyone good on that one?
Yeah?
Okay.
An hour prior, so instead of 7:06.
And let's go for the 16th, an hour prior. 6 PM. Do we want to stick a Monday, the 23rd? That was Monday, the 23rd.
Yeah, if we keep it to Mondays, everybody,
That makes,
Yes?
I'm okay with the Monday, the 23rd.
Mary? Michael?
Yeah, that's fine. Do we,
Keith?
because that's not a meeting night, do we want to do something different? So maybe.
What do you want, have lunch? I don't know.
Yeah, breakfast, I'll
What do you
bring
want?
donuts. I'm just thinking for residents that might
Okay.
work at night, they might want to come to one during the day.
okay, so Councilman Reifenberg is buying lunch.
That's fine, yeah.
Do you want to do an after? is
Well, I'm
it
just thinking like, maybe in the morning for
I'll
people.
miss it, that's fine.
So Frank has difficulty during the
Can
afternoon.
you do the morning? Like early morning?
If we, probably not.
All right, so we'll do it at night.
How's a
I was
Tuesday
just
morning?
throwing it out
What-
there.
It's tough. So typically between the hours of 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, it's tough for me. But don't, I mean, like, I could give my comments at another meeting. We're just getting, like, and don't hold that meeting because I can't, don't not hold it because I can't be here, right? Like, we're gonna make changes at another meeting.
I
yes.
don't care either way. If we want to do it
Let's
at
just
night.
shoot for a Monday night. We'll keep it all Mondays this way. It's
Okay.
easier for the residents. I don't see anyone having any trouble coming out here on a Monday night.
Okay, so 6 PM for the following, the third
6
Monday.
PM on the
23rd?
23rd.
Cool.
And that should cover us.
Okay.
And then we'll have to do some more when we get closer to actually approving in November. I believe our approval date has to be on the 10th or the 9th, because we're off on the 10th. And then it has to be in by the 22nd. Okay, so we got those 3 meeting dates. The 2nd, the 16th, and the 23rd of October,
All at 6 PM?
all at 6 PM.
Okay.
Keep it nice and easy. All right.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yeah, you want to
Before we
remind me
go
how
into
we do-
resolutions, can we have the county legislator that's waiting
Yes,
come up
thank
and
you very
give
much.
us a report? Thanks.
Like I said earlier today, this agenda is all over the place because we've had so many glitches. My apologies to you, Ms. Houston.
No need to apologize, of course, I'm happy to be here.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. A couple of quick updates I wanted to give you about our meeting last Monday, our legislative board meeting. 2 non-consent items we discussed and approved was New York State is the only state in the country that doesn't allow for youth hunting. So 2 years ago, they did a pilot project, and they started giving licenses to youth to do deer hunting specifically. And what we were told at the time was they were doing a 2-year study and they were going to pilot program and then they would adopt it as a final resolution for the state. Instead, they've decided to extend it for another 2 years to get more data, although I can happily say that there were 0 instances of any safety issues that came upon for the first 2 years. But we did extend it from the legislature for 2 more years, and of course, the hope is that in 2 years, there will be continued no safety issues, and they will make it a permanent law for youth hunting in New York State. The other non-consent item we discussed and passed was our county solid waste management plan. It's a 10-year plan. Currently, in the county, we do waste to energy, which is, of course, a burn plant. A lot of constituents came out and discussed that they wanted a more comprehensive composting plan that the county does not have. And we discussed different pilot projects that are happening right now in the city of Beacon, Village of Red Hook, and town of Rhinebeck, all have pilot projects going. And we have met with solid waste management officials, and we really believe that composting at the local level is the most effective way to compost. And based on the pilot program that are running right now in the county, those 3 municipalities I discussed, they're having great success with very, very little contamination. And if you know anything about composting, the single biggest ruiner to composting is contamination. The whole lot is then ruined. So we're looking at ways to, in this budget program coming up for our budget, looking at ways to offer some incentive to municipalities for local composting. So whether it be through your climate smart community programs or how we can work together to bring those forward. So I'll having discussions with you guys individually to talk about composting and ways that we can assist the municipality here in Pleasant Valley for composting, because we really believe at a local level it's the most effective. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was, of course, the bus shelter. As you see, as of September 12th, the concrete was poured. The site work is all complete. The only thing we're waiting on is the actual shelter, which, of course, with supply chain issues, they're delayed. We expect it, hopefully before the end of the year, but it's on order. And once we receive the bus shelters, there's 12 of them going out through the county, but of course, the one in Pleasant Valley was done by budget amendment last year. It'll take about 3 days to install. So it's ready to go as soon as we get them, and you see it's at the Acme Plaza and the concrete's in. So just wanted to update you guys on that stuff.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, Deidre.
Again, my apologies for the delay. Okay. New business resolutions. We'll do those first, right? So Town Board Resolution 910-2023, authorizing acceptance of gifts to the town of Pleasant Valley.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do you want to preempt?
Sure. I just wanted to address the suggestions that were raised about the contracts that we're voting on, that the board has before them tonight for the seal coating and the security cameras. What's before the board is a resolution to approve for each and a contract for each, and the resolution states that the supervisor is authorized to sign the contracts in the same or substantially the same form as attached. So I'll be happy to take another look at that contract format. It's kind of tried and true, and it's been working for a while, but I'll be happy to take another look if there are specific suggestions on clauses we should include, and I can do that in the next day or two before the supervisor signs them. So my suggestion would be to go ahead and approve them if you want to do so, and then I will just double check before they actually are signed. And I also just wanted to note as far as the security cameras, because some of the material is just placed after the vote on the agenda. But what happened with the security cameras, we put out an initial RFP, we got 2 proposals, but they weren't exactly for the same set of equipment. And so after some discussion about what was the better type of equipment and connectivity for the town to have, a second RFP was put out specific to that set of equipment, and that was distributed to a number of vendors, but only one chose to put in a proposal. So I think that is explained in the resolution.
Okay. So without any further ado, Town Board Resolution 911-2023, resolution authorizing the town supervisor to execute an agreement with Nick Mistakis, Blacktop Seal Coating Incorporated, for the Pleasant Valley Recreation Office at Helen Aldrich Park, and seal coating and stripping.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Really
favor?
quick, I just want to note to because we went out and we kind of split this up on the comment of a resident for also behind Town Hall here. So people might be asking, well, why aren't we awarding that portion of it? As we all know, the parking lot also has a dip that fills up with water, so the towns were pursuing, potentially looking at fixing that before spending the money on seal coating. That's why we're not awarding that tonight. I just want to make sure everybody was on the same.
But it is a plan to do that.
Yeah.
We have to fix that puddle.
Yep.
All in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And the same thing with the construction for the
The security cameras?
cameras. Hold on, I gotta get to the, should put the resolutions after the fact. Okay, Resolution 912, 2023. Resolution authorizing a contract with Superior Telephone Systems for the security cameras at Pleasant Valley Highway Garage.
So moved.
Second, and
Oh.
then discussion again, just to point out what Mr. Hart was saying. We should probably have a quick discussion because we do have it as 14A on the next section. So if we were planning on having a discussion, we should probably have that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just to back up what Emily said, we, after looking at both sets of equipment, they were not apples to apples, so we sent out a second RFP and we only got one apple back.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's needed, so.
Yep.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this goes to old business discussion, the Bodnar.
No, you're just continuing on with the
I'm gonna go down to
resolutions.
the other ones?
913, yep, because we moved those up.
Let me get to them. Town Board Resolution 913, 2023, amending the 2023 general fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Budget Resolution 914, 2023, budget modification to the 2023 general fund.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 915, 2023, amending the 2023 general fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
916, 2023, budget modification, 2023, to 2023 general fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And yet another one. Town Board Resolution 917, 2023, budget modification to 2023 general fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town Board Resolution 918, 2023, authorizing payment of abstract number 9 of 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So those are done.
You should have one more, 919.
919 is the hiring. Nope, that's that one. This is that right over here. Town Board Resolution 919, 2023, resolution appointing the law firm of McCabe, Coleman, Ventosa, and Patterson, PLLC, as special conflict counsel and authorizing the proper officials to execute an agreement for the professional services.
So moved.
Second.
We should
And
roll.
can I do a
We
roll
should
call?
do a roll call vote.
Yeah,
yes.
we should roll call.
We're gonna do a roll call vote, okay?
Councilwoman Albrecht.
I abstain.
Councilman Mazzella.
Aye.
Councilman O'Hanlon.
Aye.
Councilman Reifenberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Del Vecchio.
Abstain. Okay. Now we talk about the bottom thing, right? This is all done. This is done. Unbelievable. Done. Okay. This goes to you.
If I could just make a presentation before, and then if you don't mind. I just wanted to bring into context what the town board is going to proceed to start possibly deliberating on tonight. And that's the application of Richard Bodner. He's made an application to the Town of Pleasant Valley Planning Board, which was submitted on or about October 31st, 2021, for a lot line realignment of 4 parcels of land, which he owns off Barber Lane and Martin Road. The subdivision seeks to realign all 4 lots into 3 building parcels, as demonstrated by the subdivision plan submitted to the planning board, and the access to those parcels would be, for ingress and egress, would be off a common drive off Barber Lane, shown on the maps. The planning board has determined that since the reconfigured 3 building lots will not have direct frontage on a public road, but will instead be accessed by a common drive through deeded easements, that an open development area approved by the town board pursuant to the provisions of 280A subdivision 4 of the town law is required. And that's been submitted to the town board to make a determination. In addition, the planning board has determined that since the proposed common driveway off Barber Lane does not have unobstructed site distance of 300 feet minimum in either direction, east or west, as determined by the posted speed limits on Barber Lane, which are 30 miles per hour, as required by section 46-3 of the town code, that a variance, an area variance, would have to be also submitted to the town board and granted before this could move forward. The Bodner application to the town board is set forth in a series of letters with several exhibits that were submitted by the offices of Rebecca Volk, dated August 29th, 2022, November 18th, 2022, and February 22, 23, June 9th, 23, and August 15th, 23. So the most important thing that the town board is going to have to determine, and I think this should be the first thing that it determines, is whether or not to grant a variance from the 300-foot site distance requirement contained in section 46-3 of the town code. And those standards would be the same standards that are applied for an area variance that's in our town code. And those standards are that in making the determination, the town board must take into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the area variance is granted, as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by the granting of the area variance. In making your decision, you have to apply 5 factors. 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. 2, whether the benefit sought by Mr. Bodner can be achieved by some other method feasible for Mr. Bodner to pursue other than an area variance. 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. 4, whether granting the proposed area variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical environmental conditions in the neighborhood or the zoning district. And last, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. Now, Mr. Bodner has commissioned a traffic study by Creighton Manning, in which the consulting engineers have indicated that based upon the AASHTO, American Association of State Highway Transportation Official Standards, and by site distance and speed studies that they've made of Barber Lane, that the AASHTO site distance standards for low-volume road should be utilized by the board in granting the area variance instead of the standards set forth in the town code. As stated in the Creighton Manning supplemental submission to the town. By virtue of those standards, the site distance going to the left as you exit the proposed driveway would be 115 feet, and the site distance to the right would be 156 feet. The Creighton Manning memo does acknowledge that the 115-foot standard that would be applied by applying the low-volume road standards set forth in the AASHTO regulations would still not result in a 115-foot site distance to the left and to the right of the exit. So it's your decision that you'll have to make by applying the criteria for an area variance as to whether you agree that an area variance should be granted based upon the AASHTO regulations, or whether you want to adhere to the site distance requirements that are set forth in the code of 300 feet in either direction. So that's the decision that you will have to make. The second issue that you'll have to decide, if you decide to grant the variance, would be whether an open development area approval should be granted. In that case, there are no standards set forth in Section 280A of the town law for granting or denying an open development area approval, but there has been decisional law in the state of New York which indicates that before you can grant an open development area approval and allow access over a right-of-way or an easement rather than direct access, the road must be suitably improved for use by emergency and other vehicles during all weather conditions, and whether the appropriate width and improvement to the road that they're going to build provides safe access to the town road. So if you get past the variance, you still have to decide the open development area criteria. And if you get past those two hurdles, the third decision that you would have to make would be your seeker determination. This is a unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. The applicant has submitted a Part 1 of the short environmental assessment form, and you would have to review the standards set forth in the Part 2 of the short form environmental assessment form to determine if the granting of the variance and the open development area will result in an adverse environmental impact to the surrounding community. So there's a lot of things that you have to decide in making this determination. We did receive an additional letter from Mr. Greg Bolner, our, excuse me, let me see if I can get that, our engineer, in response to an inquiry that I made of him as to whether the town was mandated to use the AASHTO standard or whether it was mandated to use the town code standard of 300 feet. And his response, together with an attachment to that response, was that the driveway only works at 20 miles per hour. It does not work at the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And I think that's the position of our engineer. You will have to decide whether you're going to follow that. And I believe that representative of Ms. Falk's office is here to respond to the submission by our engineer.
Can I just ask some clarity real quick?
Sure.
So the 20 miles an hour works with the AASHTO version of it or ours?
Well, actually not necessarily, because we looked at the AASHTO version, AASHTO, and determined that even at 25 miles an hour, it didn't necessarily meet the requirements, the site distance requirements. But they've chosen to use the 25 miles per hour standard rather than the 30 miles per hour standard. And the problem is, and this is something you're going to have to grapple with, the posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour. And you will have to decide whether you should ignore the posted speed limit in making your determination. If you use the posted speed limit, they do not meet the sight distance requirements. That's clear under either standard, either the AASHTO or the town code standard. That's the decision that you will have to make. So I'll turn it over to.
I think you finally said what I was about to say.
Okay. Do you agree with what I? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Joanna Longcore of counsel to the law offices of Rebecca Volk on behalf of the applicant. And I just wanted to address the issues of the standards. I believe that the chart that was provided in the CPL memorandum of July 28th sets forth the distances under the AASHTO standards for at 25 miles per hour, and it would meet those standards for a low density, low volume roadway. And that memo does say that using the operating speed. So what Creighton Manning did was come up with an operating speed to determine whether vehicles are actually traveling at 30 miles per hour, above 30 miles per hour, or below 30 miles per hour. And they found an average operating speed on that road to be, I believe they found it to be about 23 miles per hour. So they rounded that up to 25 miles per hour to go with the standards. That standard is met. It is my position, the applicant's position, that it would be advisable to use the actual operating speeds as opposed to the posted speed limits. I think you would want that option available in, let's say, the reverse situation where you have a roadway where the actual operating speed is well above the speed limit. I think the board would want to be able to say, well, we actually would like to figure out what the AASHTO standard is based on what people are actually driving. So we don't want, just the lesser sight line available for 30 miles per hour if people are really driving 40 miles per hour. In this case, because people really can't, given the design of the road, get to 30 miles per hour, we believe it's sensible to use the 25 mile per hour standard. And I believe that the original assessment of CPL was that would be an advisable standard to use. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And I don't know if there are any other questions, but that was really what I came here to address.
I have a comment on that.
Yes.
So, if you go back to, and I'm not advocating one position or another, it's your decision that you will have to make, the board. But I think you're misconstruing CPL's memo of July 28th. What it actually said on page 2 was that although the operating speed is lower, it may be more conservative to assume that the design speed should be the speed limit of 30 miles per hour. However, the observed operating 85th percentile speed of 25 miles per hour are appropriate considering the curve to the east and the hill to the west generally prevent vehicles from getting up to faster speeds in a short distance. So if I can interpret what CPL was actually saying is that the board could use either one. It would be appropriate to apply the 30 mile per hour speed limit, in which case they do not meet the sight distance requirements, and you have to decide whether you want to grant the variance from that, or the 25 mile per hour speed limit, which I still don't think they meet the sight distance requirement in both cases. Do you agree with me, Emily?
No, if you use the 25, then they do meet well, Greg should.
They do meet it under
Yeah.
the low volume,
On the low volume, okay.
Yes, under the low volume, low speed.
For both, because the map of Creighton Manning, that was, July 3rd, 2023, has 115 feet going to the east, to the west, and it says 156 feet going to the east.
Correct.
So that doesn't meet the low volume. Isn't it the low volume 115?
The low volume is 115 at the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Oh, okay.
135 at the 30-mile-an-hour posted.
Okay, all right. So if you accept the 25 mile per hour speed limit, then they do meet the,
Correct.
but those are the AASHTO standards, not the town standards.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Does that sound right? Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So when do we, yeah, so.
So with that,
That is it.
if you, 9:30, if you want to start deliberating tonight, what I recommend is each board member say their piece or comments or questions that you may have. When we finish that process, if we have a consensus of opinion, I probably would ask the board to take a straw vote on whether it's going to grant or deny the area variance. If you grant or if you deny the area variance, we don't have to deal with the open development area or the environmental review. I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm just saying that we don't have to get to those 2 points. So I don't know how you want to start with which board member. You want to go left to right? I'll leave that up to you.
I've looked at this many different ways, and I have to tell you, none of it makes me feel good. I just have this thought that, this thing doesn't like me. I just have this thought that if something happens to somebody in the future, it's gonna come back to haunt us.
Okay? Mr. Mazzella?
So we've heard a lot about this. I want to commend all the residents first off that came out and spoke, that live next to or behind or near or around this. Look, here's what I'll say is, I hear you. I wouldn't, if I lived on that small road, I wouldn't want an extra potentially 8 cars, maybe more. I'll stick to my comment of, I believe they can go build what they want if that's approved, but I wouldn't approve the variance for this.
Mr. O'Hanlon, you want to go first?
Okay, well, I mean,
Next.
for me, I'm satisfied that we're looking at everything, that we're not looking at a huge safety hazard or a huge potential for accident here, especially considering with the road I live on myself, which has most of it has a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. I know I have driveways on the road that probably don't have 50 or 60 feet of sight distance in both directions. And in the 20-plus years I've lived there, nobody got T-boned. To me, it's splitting hairs, and I'm ready to say let them have their driveway.
Mr. Reifenberg?
Yes, so I have a couple things about this. The applicant's basically arguing that we should consider a lower speed limit because their traffic study came back with a low-density, low-volume road. One of the things that I don't know is taken into account with that traffic study is Martin and Barbara Road is used as a cutover in the evenings when, you know, buses are backed up on West Road or North Avenue, or just the cars because the traffic light isn't timed correctly, or a whole bajillion other reasons, and people fly across Martin and Barbara Lane. And at those points in times during the day, I would argue that it probably isn't a low-density, low-volume road, and people are probably traveling faster than 23 miles per hour because they're cutting over because they're frustrated that they're sitting in traffic. So all Also, I have a hard time really, the planning board, I believe this went before them, they said that they don't like this idea. They're not supporting us with giving the variance. The town highway superintendent's issued a whole bunch of comments on this that kind of don't really support our idea if we're gonna give them a variance. The town engineers kind of, we don't really have anybody backing us up if we give this variance and saying this is a great idea. So I think we have a responsibility of safety, and I personally don't believe that with the situation of such low visibility there to begin with, putting 3 houses in with a cutover road like that, which I don't think their traffic study really picked up on that very local thing that we as a board know, but their traffic study obviously wouldn't know that, so.
So, in somewhat of what Councilman Reifenberg said, I cut through Martin Road a lot of times. I do it quickly, I admit to it. People go through there way faster than any traffic study that I'm even listening to. That road itself is a problem, so it creates a safety issue that no one's addressing. Our attorney has said it should meet 5 criterias, and the way I see it, 4 of them have not been met. This is self-created, okay? This could simply be a different kind of thing altogether, I believe. I believe there is change to other properties that haven't been addressed. Can there be other options? I believe there is another one was discussed somewhere along the line. Is it substantial? I'm sure it is. And what's the impact on the area? Well, again, the impact is safety. So I don't know if this is a good idea. Do we have to have a roll call vote?
Well, I just want to make sure that before you make a decision,
Well.
tonight would be, I'm sorry. What happened to my microphone?
It's a long
What I would do is take the everything we have in the record so far, including the input that we've received from our town engineer, our highway superintendent, and the comments that you made tonight, with the understanding that you all have reviewed the standards for an area variance and feel that at least some of them have not been met, probably particularly the adverse effect on the neighboring property owners, number 4. And take a straw vote tonight as to whether you are of a mind to grant or deny the area variance. With that, I would take everything and put it into a formal resolution for you to adopt at your next town board meeting. So I cover all the bases and everything that we've had, which factors into your decision, including your comments tonight. So if you want to take a straw vote, do it by roll call vote or the board members, but with the understanding that it's not binding until you vote on whatever resolution I prepare for the next meeting.
Nay.
Councilwoman Albrecht.
No, thank you.
You're gonna do,
Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, it should be.
nay.
Councilman Mazzella.
Nay.
Councilman O'Hanlon.
Aye.
Councilman Reifenberg.
No?
Supervisor Delvecchio.
Nay.
So when you say nay, you're against the
I'm saying,
variance.
if the resolution was to approve it, I'm not voting for it.
Okay, so I think I have my marching orders, and I should have something for you, hopefully by the next meeting, but certainly if not by the meeting after that.
Thank you. Okay, so we discussed a little bit about the security cameras and why we made the way we went. Financing of the new compactor.
And I think to clarify, by financing, we're not actually looking to borrow money, we're just figuring out, it's gonna cost slightly more than we budgeted for, that's why I think we're having this discussion.
Right, so we're not taking a loan out for this. So I believe we're basically just trying to we kind of have an idea what it's costing. Okay, and did we put it out to bid, or are we supposed to put it out to bid? What's the procedure there? Go ahead, please.
How we doing tonight? I know it's getting late. So, because we're able to do a lot of the work ourselves at the highway garage, we can pour the new concrete pad, we can put in the infrastructure needed, much like what we did with the fuel depot. Rather than put it out to bid for a contractor to come in and do it, which would cost us tens of thousands of dollars more than our ability to do it ourselves, the only thing we're purchasing is the actual compactor. The compactor installed, I believe, was $41,726. And that was the quote I got from the Waste Management north of us, WasteQuip. And that's installed. They'll come, they'll set the compactor, they hook it up to the electric, which is already there, to the existing building. We would take the old compactor out, cut it up, put it in a dumpster. We'd actually get the scrap weight for the metal, which is kind of nice, probably be a few $100 anyway for the old compactor. And in talking with the bookkeeper, I kind of agree. I know my original estimate, I said, we should put, 65,000 out. I think we should keep 70 just in case, because like I said, once we open up that wall, we don't know what we're going to get into once we start digging, and it could require more fill, could require, extra reinforcement. We're probably going to do tiebacks, drill holes through the concrete wall and use plates and long bolts and do what they call dead men and put them back to kind of hold that wall back and keep that from falling in. I've had the engineer, Greg Ballner was here, he had his structural engineer look at it. He doesn't see any problem with the wall falling over any time in any of our lifetimes, but discussing with him, we figured the tiebacks would just give it that extra strength and durability. But we do have to dig out the concrete. I don't know if you've noticed, it sagged over the years, probably dropped almost 6 inches due to washout. So that needs to be fixed. So again, I kind of figured probably Mother Nature ever stops raining on us. About 2 weeks for us to complete the work that we need to do before they can come set the compactor. And then, like I said, that'd be save the town, a small fortune letting us do the work.
John, just to clarify,
Sure.
the compactor you're looking at, is that under a state bid or something?
Yeah, WasteQuip is under New York State bid, so.
So we don't need to do our own RFP?
Exactly.
Thank you.
And I think it was me that started the conversation about looking into your budget and
Right.
using potential funds, which we came to find out that the transfer station's obviously, is not under your budget.
Right,
So
right.
that's kind of why we're revisiting this conversation.
It's its own, it falls under the general fund.
Yeah.
So to pull money out of highway for that, it's kind of, and I still have things to purchase end of the year, tires and pipe and stuff.
So we need, I think the best thing, you and the bookkeeper identified some funds that we could use. I still think we probably need a resolution
Oh, yeah.
to put that all together, so
Yeah.
if you work with her, if you need my help,
Sure.
let me know.
Yeah, I can work with her tomorrow and get that done for the next meeting. All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. 14C, sign code, Mr. Mazzella.
Mike, you wanna start?
Yeah, it's crazy that we're even talking about this. And it's funny because people at home or here probably think that most of tonight's probably about local people, which it's not, because when you drive around town, most local candidates have actually followed the town code. So these are just, I'm going to run through basically how we got to where we are today. I'm just going to put the facts out there and you can come up with whatever determination you want. So it's important for us, the board, and the residents to understand because there's a lot of conversation about this. So back in 2009, the town board, made up of, at the time, Frank Szynski, Don Sagliano, Chris Hart, Steve Albrecht, and Gene Curley, unanimously passed Resolution 82 of 2009, which changed Chapter 98 of our town code and adopted the sign code that the town currently operates under. Back in 2001, the local election, there was a lot of residents complaining about the number of signs that were showing up at all the intersections. As I've said in past meetings, I was one of the offenders. There was a lot of talk on Facebook. There was a lot of people that came here and complained about it. People did not want campaign signs or any signs at all of the intersections. So on December 21st of 2022, almost a year ago, I introduced a discussion on the agenda to talk about temporary signs within the town in a general fashion. I brought a handout to the board to look at what other regulations surrounding towns had. We had a discussion. At that meeting, it was noted in the minutes that the supervisor wanted to look into it as well, and the attorneys would do more research. That was the first meeting. Then on March 20th, 2023, we had another meeting, and we discussed this openly at a town board meeting. And we talked about how, we basically talked about it more. And then the next meeting, April 3rd, 2023, it was brought to our attention that we don't need to rewrite a code, because then we knew that a resolution was passed in 2009 by that board that set town law that stated pretty clearly where election signs can be. So at that point, we stopped working towards designing anything to address the residents of this town's concerns. Those were 3 open meetings. I don't remember anybody actually getting up and commenting that they were totally against this, and everything's been transparent and out in the open. So I'll read the town code, a particular part of it. It's 9846E7. It says a temporary sign announcing or supporting political candidates or issues in connection with any national, state, or local election may be posted on private property. Such signs shall be no larger than any other exempt signs in the permitting process. So I'd like to point out the on private property part. Basically, the town code says you can put up as many campaign signs as you want on your private property, and nobody's going to say anything about it. And up to this point, I believe, talking to the zoning administrator and the building inspector, they have not taken any signs off of private property unless a business owner or the resident asks them to. Knowing that we were getting into election season, as we all call it, the silly season, on July 17th of 2023, which is about a month and a half before any of us start putting up our election signs, I made a motion in the public meeting again that the town will aggressively be enforcing 9846E7, which I just read, when it comes to temporary signs moving forward. This passed unanimously, noting that Councilman O'Hanlon was absent. After that meeting, Supervisor DeVecchio made party chairs aware of that town would be enforcing the code, and at the end of August, signs started appearing around town in areas that were not private property and on private property that no permission was given by the owners. Again, I'm going to put it out there, though, that I'm not calling out any candidates, because as I know, a lot of people put signs up, and there's an informational part of this because the town was taking a different stance. So the town zoning enforcement officer, the zoning administrator, the building inspector, they had discussions about this. I believe they also reached out to party chairs, and they also, they ended up going out and they removed, and they also talked to their own attorneys that they dealt with independently from our attorneys up here. And they felt that they could enforce a portion of what I just read, and they brought back some political signs. They also picked up Germania signs. They picked up other temporary signs. Basically, any temporary sign that they determined was not on private property, they picked up. If it was on private property and they couldn't determine if the owner wanted it there or not, it was left, which is the right thing to do. So political signs were not targeted on that day. They went out and removed about 45 signs. After the signs were removed, there were local candidates who retrieved their signs from Town Hall, and then they decided to go back out and put them back up in the same locations that the zoning office removed them from. The zoning office has sent out numerous emails stating they need to be removed. Multiple businesses have stated they don't want the signs on their property. There's actually been an argument that there's a business in town, it's private property. They have contacted the town and stated they don't want any signs for anybody on their private property. And we now have people at the county level trying to argue that the manager of this business has no right to make a determination that political signs can't be put on their property without their permission. That's the rabbit hole we're going down, is that it's very simple. The residents of this town, I gotta say, the 5 of us are on the same page that we listened to the residents and they complained. We started the process. We found out that there was a code that actually addressed it, and we have been so transparent and put it out there. We've tried to deal with this completely privately and not have to have this conversation public. There's been numerous emails from the town, not just the supervisor, the zoning department, the building inspector, to everybody that's involved. And unfortunately, there's still people that take it upon themselves to completely ignore and frankly waste taxpayers' money on us having to pay people to go out and enforce this town code. It's very simple. The town residents, they don't want the signs at every intersection, just to Mr. Veter's point tonight. Town businesses don't want signs put on their property without asking. It's very simple. You don't go on somebody else's property and put your sign up. I'll mind you, that's not infringing on a First Amendment right. The argument could actually be that you're infringing on their right of speech by putting your sign up on their private property. The town board in 2009 specifically put in a law that stops this from happening. All I'm asking, and again, I'm not saying it's the candidates themselves, is do the right thing. We should not be wasting time on this. And I've had plenty of conversations with Supervisor DeVecchio about this, and it's gotten to the point where we honestly don't know what else to do except for having this conversation right now. Just do the right thing. Nobody's taking your signs down if it's on private property. That's the reason why the signs are still up at Acme. That's the reason the signs are still up at CVS, because the town is not taking that extremist view of going out and ripping down signs. We're saying when the signs were taken down on the intersections where it's obviously not private property, don't go put your signs back up. And I will tell you, all of the local candidates from both sides that did the right thing, thank you, because you've saved this town and us a lot of aggravation. The people that continue to do it locally and at the county level, please, just do the right thing. We should not be wasting another minute on this.
I agree, and I would like to just piggyback a little bit on, for instance, the area in front of Acme is owned by Acme, right? It's not public property. Well, it's public, but it's owned by Acme. It doesn't mean that just because there's a right-of-way there, which are sections 9846 F17 says no signs are allowed in DOT right-of-way, not political signs, not, this person for dog catcher signs. No signs are allowed in DOT right-of-way. So we're not singling anybody out. We're not stopping someone's First Amendment right. We're not doing any of that. No sign. We're listening to residents about cleaning up the town, and we've done a good job up to this point, roughly. I would say roughly, but I don't know. I think it's a little ridiculous that we have candidates arguing this, that they're running for a job that they'd have to uphold this code.
And we didn't, and I would add, we didn't, it's not the five of us that put this code in. This code has been on the books since 2009. So and we've been super transparent with this entire process, and not once, I can't think of a time where somebody got up and they said, stop, we don't think this is right, you guys should rethink this. Because if that happened, I promise you, the conversation would have changed. So do the right thing.
Okay. At this point in time, I'm going to open the meeting up to the public comment for new business.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chris Hart, Smith Road. Last meeting, I suggested you place the state on notice for hazardous conditions out 44. Have you authorized the town attorney to take that action?
So I've been trying since the last meeting to get all the letters that I've already pre-written and get them to our attorney, and the process, we had our wonderful crashes that happened. So she has not received all the prior letters yet, but she will.
So there'll be a resolution probably at the next meeting authorizing her to take that action?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Point of reference for Mr. Hart. It actually already is on the state website that this section of 44 is to be paved next year with state and federal funds.
Yeah, and we've been told it was supposed to be, paved this fall, but
They've actually put it on the books, though.
as John can tell you, if there's a pothole in the road, you go and repair it. And there might be money left over this year that they can go out and make temporary repairs to correct the hazardous condition. So it can't hurt us one way or another to at least put them on notice. Thank you, though.
Anyone else? Not hearing any. I move we close the meeting to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Before we close out, if we need to do it formally, I will make a motion to authorize the attorney to write whatever letter they need to write.
I got it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dan, I'm sorry, what'd you say at the end there? I didn't hear it.